The fork hit the plate with a sharp clink that cut through the champagne-soaked laughter. Patricia Morrison's face went white. Not pale, white. Like someone had drained every drop of blood from her body in a single second. Her hand trembled, and the sterling silver fork clattered against the bone china again, louder this time, before tumbling onto the white tablecloth. "Mom?" Vanessa leaned toward her mother, diamond earrings catching the candlelight. "What's wrong?" But Patricia couldn't speak. Her eyes, those calculating eyes I'd stared into 2 years ago when she told me I was becoming a burden, locked onto mine from across the private dining room. I smiled. Just a little. Just enough. "You're—" Patricia's voice cracked. She stood halfway, gripping the table edge. "You're still alive?" The words exploded across the restaurant's private room like a grenade. 23 heads whipped toward me. My son David, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, froze with his champagne flute halfway to his lips. His wife Vanessa, dripping in jewelry I'd later learn was purchased with my money, looked confused, then horrified. "David," she whispered, Is that your mother?" I stood slowly from my corner table. At 67, I'd never felt more powerful. The burgundy dress, designer, paid for with money from the offshore account they didn't know existed, fit perfectly. I'd lost 30 pounds during my recovery. Gained something far more valuable. Purpose. "Hello, David," I said calmly. "Vanessa, Patricia." The way I said her name made the woman flinch. "Mom," David stammered, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been shame. "We thought, the facility said—" "That I died?" I finished for him, taking a step closer to their table. Every eye in that room was on me now. David's college buddies, Vanessa's cousins, the co-workers they'd invited to celebrate 5 years of marriage, 5 years built on my stolen fortune. "No, sweetheart, I didn't die, though I know that's what you all wanted." Vanessa's hand shot out, grabbing Patricia's wrist. "Mother, what is she talking about?" But Patricia knew. Oh, she knew. I could see it in the way her throat worked, trying to swallow, in the way her eyes darted to the exit, in the way her perfect composure, that nurse's calm she'd used to convince my son I had dementia, shattered like glass. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder, set it gently on their celebration table, right next to the anniversary cake that read, "Forever Together." $2 million, I said softly. "That's how much you stole from me, the properties you sold, the accounts you emptied, the life you erased." The folder sat there like a bomb. David's face crumbled. Vanessa started crying. Patricia tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. And me? I'd been waiting 2 years for this moment. 2 years of patient planning, of gathering evidence, of transforming from the drugged, confused woman they'd buried alive in that nursing home into something they never expected. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They thought wrong. If you believe in justice for those who've been betrayed, hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning of how I made them pay. My name is Margaret Chen, and for 60 years, I believed in family above everything else. My parents came to America from Taiwan with 2 suitcases and a dream. They worked 16-hour days in their small grocery store in Queens, teaching me one lesson above all others: family first, always. When they passed, Mom from a stroke at 72, Dad from a broken heart 6 months later, I carried that mantra like a torch. I married Richard Chen when I was 23. He was a real estate appraiser with vision, and together we built something beautiful. No children for the first 10 years. We poured everything into buying properties. Fixer-uppers in Brooklyn, a duplex in Astoria, small apartment buildings that needed love. Richard had an eye for value that others missed, and I had a head for numbers that made banks nervous. David came when I was 33, our miracle baby, the center of our universe. Richard died 3 days before our 40th anniversary. Heart attack at 63. Gone before the ambulance arrived. The grief nearly killed me too. But Richard had left me something precious, a real estate portfolio worth $2 million, generating enough rental income that I'd never have to worry. And David, always David. My son met Vanessa Morrison at a tech conference in Boston. She was 26, blonde, bubbly, everything I wasn't. I told myself the unease in my stomach was just protective mother instinct. When David brought her to Sunday dinner, I welcomed her with open arms. "Mrs. Chen, this pot roast is incredible," Vanessa gushed, touching my hand. "David said you were an amazing cook." I smiled, ignoring how her fingers felt cold. "Call me Margaret, please, and there's plenty more." They married within a year. I paid for the wedding, $40,000 at a vineyard upstate. David had student loans from business school choking him, and I couldn't bear to see my son struggle. So I paid those off too. $80,000 gone with a wire transfer and my boy's tears of gratitude. "Mom, I can't accept this," David said, his voice thick. "You're my son. This is what family does." When they wanted to buy a house in Westchester, "Closer to you, Mom." I wrote the check for the down payment, $200,000. It seemed like such a small price for having them nearby. For future grandchildren I could spoil, for Sunday dinners that would continue. Vanessa's mother, Patricia, came to those dinners sometimes, a retired nurse with silver hair and cold blue eyes. She'd assess my home with a practiced gaze, commenting on the valuable antiques and prime location. "You're sitting on a fortune here, Margaret," Patricia said one evening, running her finger along my mother's jade Buddha. "These properties must be worth quite a bit." "They're Richard's legacy," I replied, "for David someday." Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, family first. The first red flag came 6 months into the marriage. Vanessa began managing things. The Sunday dinners moved to her schedule. She'd call to cancel if I'd already shopped for ingredients. "David's just so tired from work, Margaret. You understand." When they did come, Vanessa would subtly redirect conversations, cutting me off mid-story about David's childhood. "We've heard that one before, haven't we, babe?" she'd say, laughing lightly. David would nod, uncomfortable. My son, who used to tell me everything. Patricia's visits increased. She'd drop by unannounced, always with some excuse, returning a dish, picking up something for Vanessa. But I'd catch her looking at my prescription bottles in the bathroom, noting the dates on my calendar, asking detailed questions about my routines. "Do you live here all alone, Margaret?" Patricia asked one afternoon, her tone dripping concern. "Isn't that frightening? At your age?" I was 63, healthy, sharp. "I managed just fine," I said. "But the seeds were being planted. I just didn't know it yet. Family first." That's what I believed. Right up until the moment my family decided I was worth more gone than alive. The campaign to destroy me started with small things. "Mom forgot our dinner last week," Vanessa mentioned to David one Sunday, her voice carrying from the kitchen where I was washing dishes. I froze, suds dripping from my hands. I hadn't forgotten. They'd canceled. I had the voicemail saved. She seemed confused when I mentioned it. Vanessa continued, "Asked me what I was talking about." Because I hadn't forgotten. But when I opened my mouth to correct her, David was already looking at me with new eyes, worried eyes. "Mom, are you feeling okay? You do seem a little scattered lately." "I'm not scattered," I said firmly. "You canceled. Check your phone." But doubt had entered the room like poison gas. 2 weeks later, Patricia called. "Margaret, dear, you missed your dentist appointment this morning. Dr. Feldman's office called Vanessa concerned. They said you confirmed yesterday." My calendar sat on the kitchen table, blank for that day. "I don't have a dentist appointment until next month," I said slowly. "Oh." Patricia's pause was perfectly timed. "Perhaps you should write these things down. I know as we age, memory can be tricky. I saw it constantly when I was nursing." Saw it constantly, past tense, professional opinion. The knife slid in so smoothly I barely felt it. The incidents multiplied. Bills I'd supposedly forgotten to pay, except I had the canceled checks. Conversations Vanessa claimed we'd had that never happened. A lunch date David swore I'd arranged, arriving at a restaurant to find me confused about why he was there, except I'd never arranged it. His calendar had been hacked, but who would believe that over their wife's concerned face? "Maybe we should talk to your doctor, Mom," David said gently after the restaurant incident. "Just a checkup. Rule out anything serious." The anything serious hung in the air like a noose. Alzheimer's, dementia, the diseases that terrified every aging person. Patricia offered to accompany me to the appointment. "I can explain your symptoms to the doctor," she said. "Medical terminology can be so confusing." Dr. Harrison had been my physician for 15 years. He knew me, but when Patricia launched into a detailed account of my declining mental state, complete with dates, incidents, professional observations, even he looked concerned. "I'm not declining," I said, my voice rising. "These things didn't happen the way she's saying." "Now, Margaret," Patricia soothed, her nurse's voice activated. "Denial is common. Dr. Harrison, in my professional experience, patients often don't recognize their own symptoms." Dr. Harrison prescribed mild cognitive support medication, anti-anxiety pills for the agitation I was displaying. I didn't want to take them, but David's face, my son's worried, pleading face, broke me. "Just try them, Mom, please, for me." What I didn't know was that Patricia had called Dr. Harrison's office before the appointment, had spoken to the nurse, one professional to another, about her concerns for her daughter-in-law's elderly mother-in-law, had primed the pump perfectly. The pills made me foggy. I was forgetting things now. Conversations became difficult to track. I'd find myself mid-sentence and lose the thread completely. "See," Vanessa would say gently, "maybe you should rest, Margaret." David started handling my finances. "Just temporarily, Mom, until you're feeling better. I don't want you to worry about bills and stress yourself out." I signed the power of attorney on a Tuesday. David pushed the papers across my kitchen table, Patricia standing behind him like a guardian angel. "It's temporary," David assured me, "just so I can pay your bills and manage things, in case something happens." "Nothing's going to happen," I said, but my hand shook as I signed. The medication made everything feel distant, underwater. Patricia had adjusted my dosage twice already. "For your anxiety," she'd said. Later, much later, I'd learned she'd been swapping my real medications for stronger ones. Nothing illegal, just anti-anxiety meds at doses that left me genuinely confused. A nurse knew exactly what combinations would work. My neighbors stopped seeing me outside. When Mrs. Kowalski from next door knocked, Vanessa answered, "Margaret's not feeling well. The doctors say she needs rest. All the visitors were getting overwhelming for her." Mrs. Kowalski peered past Vanessa, concerned. "Can I just say hello?" "She's sleeping, you understand." My friends from the community center received similar messages. "Margaret's taking some time for her health. She'll reach out when she's ready." Except I never sent those messages. The isolation wrapped around me like shrink wrap, getting tighter every day. I tried calling my sister Grace in Portland. David had taken my cell phone. "You kept losing it, Mom," and given me a landline instead. But when I dialed, David was suddenly there. "Who are you calling?" "Grace, I want to talk to Grace." "Aunt Grace is on vacation, remember? She told you last month." Had she? I couldn't remember. The fog was so thick now. David gently took the phone from my hand. "Maybe later, Mom. You should rest." Rest. That's all they wanted me to do. Rest and take my pills and slowly, gradually disappear. But there was something they didn't know. Something Richard had set up 20 years ago before David was even born. An offshore account, a safety net, $500,000 they couldn't touch, couldn't see, didn't know existed. Even through the fog, some part of me remembered, held onto that secret like a life raft in a drowning sea. I'd need it. Soon. The nursing home smelled like industrial disinfectant and despair. It's a beautiful facility, Mom, David said, his voice too bright as he walked me down the dingy hallway. Assisted living. You'll have your own room, activities, nurses on staff. I don't need a nursing home, I said, but even I could hear how weak my voice sounded, how confused I felt. Nothing made sense anymore. Days blurred together. David, please. It's for the best. Vanessa appeared on my other side, her hand firm on my elbow. The doctor said you need professional care. Remember what Dr. Harrison said? I didn't remember. I couldn't remember anything clearly anymore. The medications had increased again last week. Or was it yesterday? Time had become elastic, stretching and snapping. Patricia stood in the doorway of room 14, smiling that cold smile. Here we are, Margaret, your new home. The room was tiny. A single bed with metal rails, one window overlooking a parking lot, a dresser that looked like it came from a thrift store. This wasn't assisted living. This was a nursing home. A bad nursing home. David. I reached for my son's hand, but he was already backing toward the door. I'll visit, Mom, I promise. Once you're settled. He didn't visit. The next 6 months dissolved into a nightmare I couldn't quite grasp. They kept me heavily medicated. For your agitation, dear, the day nurses said, but there was something wrong with their eyes, their smiles. This facility wasn't just understaffed, it was negligent, possibly criminal. I shared the floor with 20 other residents, most legitimately suffering from dementia. The screaming started around dinner time and lasted through the night. Staff barely came when you pressed the call button. Meals were institutional slop served on plastic trays. I tried to protest, tried to call someone, but they'd taken my wallet, my phone, my ability to reach the outside world. You don't need those things, Margaret. You're safe here. Safe. Like a prisoner. The staff whispered sometimes, not knowing I could hear through my fog. Poor thing. Family dumped her here and disappeared. I heard they sold all her properties. Sad how kids do that nowadays. My properties. Sold. The words cut through the pharmaceutical haze like a knife. My buildings, Richard's legacy, David's inheritance. Sold. I tried to ask David about it the one time he visited 3 months in. He couldn't meet my eyes. The money's going toward your care, Mom. This place isn't cheap. But it was cheap. I could see that. This facility was a warehouse for the forgotten, charging maximum rates for minimum care. Vanessa stood behind David, her hand on his shoulder, possessive, controlling. It's all in your best interest, Margaret. The power of attorney lets David manage everything properly. Patricia came once, about 4 months into my imprisonment. The staff fawned over her. Retired nurse, knew the terminology, asked all the right questions. She waited until we were alone to lean close. You should have just gone quietly, Margaret, she whispered, adjusting my blanket with practiced hands. Made it easier on everyone. But this works too. The casual cruelty in her voice cut through my fog, made something inside me wake up. They wanted me dead. They'd settled for disappeared, drugged, controlled, erased. $2 million. That's what I was worth to them. That's what Richard and I had built over 30 years of marriage. Gone. Liquidated. Split between my son, his wife, and her calculating mother. I'd signed over everything when I signed that power of attorney, given them the keys to dismantle my entire life. But they'd made one mistake, one critical error. They'd underestimated the power of human kindness. Rosa Martinez started her night shift in my 6th month. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes and gentle hands. Where other nurses rushed through their rounds, Rosa paused, asked questions, actually listened. Mrs. Chen, you seem very alert tonight, she said one evening, checking my vitals. Your chart says advanced dementia, but... She trailed off, frowning at my medication list. I grabbed her wrist, suddenly desperate. Please, something's wrong. The medications, I wasn't like this before. Most nurses would have patted my hand and moved on. Delusional patient, dementia delusion. But Rosa had seen something in my eyes, something that didn't match the chart. She started watching, checking. 3 days later, she pulled my chair close during her rounds. "Mrs. Chen, I compared your medications to your diagnosis. These doses, they're wrong. Way too high. And some of these drugs together..." Her face was pale. "This isn't treatment. This is sedation." Hope flared in my chest, painful and bright. My son, his wife, I know. Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. "I've seen this before. Elder abuse. Family wanting someone out of the way." She helped me. God bless her, Rosa Martinez helped me. Over the next 2 weeks, she secretly reduced my medications. Swapped the highest dose pills for placebos, brought me clear water instead of the supplement drink that left me groggy, fed me real food smuggled from outside. The fog began to lift. My mind, my sharp, calculating mind that had managed a real estate empire, slowly came back online. And with it came rage, cold, crystalline, absolute rage. "I need to leave," I told Rosa, "but I have nothing. No money, no phone, no..." "My cousin drives for a medical transport company," Rosa interrupted. "He owes me a favor. Can you get somewhere safe?" I thought of Grace, my sister in Oregon, 3 states away from this nightmare. "Yes," I said, "but I need to call her first." Rosa smuggled me a burner phone. Grace answered on the second ring. When I told her everything, the betrayal, the theft, the imprisonment, my sister's voice turned to steel. "I'm booking a flight tonight. We're getting you out of there. And Margaret..." Grace paused. "We're getting your money back. All of it. And we're making them pay." For the first time in 6 months, I smiled. They thought they'd buried me. They thought I was finished. They had no idea what was coming. Rosa's cousin Miguel arrived at 2:47 a.m. in a white medical transport van with legitimate company logos. To anyone watching, it looked like a routine patient transfer. "You ready, Mrs. Chen?" Rosa whispered, helping me into a wheelchair. We'd dressed me in street clothes, jeans and a sweater Rosa had bought with her own money. My hands shook as I gripped the armrests. "I'm ready." The night supervisor was in the break room, half asleep over her 3rd coffee. Rosa had timed it perfectly. We moved quickly down the back hallway, through the service entrance. The cold October air hit my face like a baptism. Miguel loaded me into the van without a word. Rosa squeezed my hand one last time. "Go get them," she said. "And Mrs. Chen, don't look back." I didn't. The drive to the Portland airport took 3 hours. Miguel's girlfriend met us there with a wheelchair and false documents identifying me as his grandmother being transported for family care. TSA waved us through with barely a glance, just another elderly woman being moved by caring relatives. Grace was waiting at PDX arrivals, and when I saw my baby sister, I broke. 67 years old, and I sobbed like a child in her arms. "It's okay," Grace murmured, stroking my hair. "You're safe now. You're safe. And we're going to destroy them." Grace Chen Thompson had retired from law 3 years earlier after 35 years as a defense attorney. She'd handled everything from white-collar crime to complex civil litigation. More importantly, she was ruthless when protecting family. Her house in the Pearl District was a converted loft, all exposed brick and modern furniture. She'd already converted her home office into a war room. A whiteboard covered one wall, waiting for information. "First things first," Grace said, settling me into her guest room. "We detox you properly. I've got a doctor coming tomorrow, a real one. Then we start building the case." "Grace, they took everything. Richard's properties, all the money. Did they take the Cayman account?" I stared at my sister. "How do you know about..." "Richard told me when he set it up. Made me promise not to tell you unless something happened to him. Said you'd protest, insist you didn't need it." Grace's smile was grim. "Looks like he was right to be paranoid." The offshore account. $500,000 Richard had hidden away 20 years ago, back when he'd first started making real money. Emergency fund, he'd called it in the letter I'd found after his death, tucked in his safety deposit box. Don't touch unless you absolutely must. Well, this qualified. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation but the coincidence amused Grace, spent 6 hours examining me the next day. Blood tests, cognitive assessments, a full medical workup. "Your sister was right," Dr. Chen said, reviewing the results. "You've been massively over-medicated. Benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, nothing you actually needed. The combination was designed to incapacitate, not treat. Another few months, and the damage might have been permanent." The words hit like ice water. Permanent damage. They'd been willing to destroy my mind to keep me quiet. Grace moved fast. Within a week, she'd assembled a team. Harrison Webb, forensic accountant, specialist in fraud investigation, particularly skilled in tracking hidden assets and illegal transfers. His fee was $20,000, worth every penny. Maria Santos, elder abuse attorney, spent 15 years prosecuting financial exploitation cases. She'd put away dozens of predatory family members. Her eyes went cold and hard when Grace explained my situation. "They always think they'll get away with it," Maria said. "They never do." James Park, signature analysis expert, former FBI document examiner. One look at the power of attorney paperwork David had filed and he shook his head. "This signature is forged," James said, pointing to my supposed signature on 3 separate documents. "See this? The pressure points are wrong. The natural variation in your authentic signatures, here, here, and here, doesn't match. Someone traced these, probably used a light box." My hands clenched into fists. "Can you prove it in court?" "I'll testify under oath. This is textbook forgery." Harrison Webb's investigation took 6 weeks. He was thorough, methodical, brilliant. The report he delivered was 200 pages of documented fraud, property sales, 7 buildings totaling $2 million, all sold within 8 months of my commitment. Sales prices, 20 to 30% below market value, rush liquidation. Proceeds deposited into accounts controlled by David Chen. No documented consent from Margaret Chen, the actual owner. Power of attorney used was forged, per James Park analysis. Money trail. David Chen retained $1.2 million. Vanessa Morrison received direct transfers of $500K. Patricia Morrison received $300K via her daughter Vanessa. Facility care costs claimed $150K. Actual facility costs $38K. Remainder unaccounted for. Patricia Morrison's role, forged medical assessments claiming dementia diagnosis. No legitimate medical examination conducted. Prescribed medication regimen inconsistent with actual diagnosis. Visited patient once in 6 months. Evidence of abandonment. Received financial compensation from illegal property sales. The smoking gun was an email Harrison recovered from Vanessa's cloud backup. She'd been careless. Kept everything from Vanessa Morrison to Patricia Morrison. Subject, the plan date, March 15, 2023. Mom, David signed the papers. We list the properties next week. He feels guilty, but I told him it's for the best. Once they're sold, we can buy the Hamptons house we looked at. Your cut will be deposited by May. Make sure you keep up the medical monitoring at the facility. We need documentation that she's declining. Love you. They documented their own conspiracy, Harrison said, almost impressed. In writing, with emojis. Maria Santos reviewed everything with the focused intensity of a predator spotting prey. "We have them," she said finally. "Fraud, forgery, elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy, criminal charges, and civil suit. Margaret, we're going to take them apart piece by piece." "How long?" I asked. "To build the criminal case? Another year, at least. These things take time." "No," I cut her off. "We do this faster, quietly. Build the case, but don't file until I'm ready. I want to choose the moment they find out their world is ending." Grace smiled slowly. "You have something specific in mind." "I do. But first, I need to become someone they won't recognize." Maria nodded. "Strategic patience. Let them think they got away with it. Let them get comfortable, spend the money, enjoy their new life. And when they're at their most secure," she snapped her fingers, "we strike." Over the next month, the team worked in secret. Every document filed under seal, every motion confidential, no public record, no trail that would warn David, Vanessa, or Patricia. On the surface, I was a ghost, missing, disappeared. But underneath, I was building a tsunami. "There's one more thing," I told Grace one night over tea. "Rosa Martinez, the nurse who helped me escape. She saved my life." "What do you want to do?" I smiled. Something they'd never think of. Something kind. Grace got it immediately. "I like the way you think, big sister." We had them. The evidence, the proof, the legal foundation. Now came the fun part, making them sweat. 18 months of transformation. That's how long it took to turn the drugged, confused woman from that nursing home into the Margaret Chen who would walk back into her son's life like an avenging angel. The therapy came first. Dr. Nina Patel specialized in trauma recovery and elder abuse survivors. Twice a week, I sat in her Portland office and unpacked the betrayal. "Your son participated in erasing you," Dr. Patel said gently during month 3. "How does that make you feel?" "Like I failed him. Like I wasn't a good enough mother." "Stop." Her voice was firm. "Margaret, what happened to you wasn't a reflection of your parenting. It was a reflection of his character and his wife's manipulation." The anger came in waves. Some days I screamed into pillows. Other days I cried until my eyes were swollen shut. But slowly, session by session, I stopped blaming myself and started channeling the rage into something productive. Revenge. The physical transformation happened parallel to the emotional one. The nursing home had left me 40 pounds overweight, institutional food, and 0 exercise. Grace hired a personal trainer named Marcus who'd worked with elderly recovery patients. "We're going to take this slow," Marcus said. "Rebuild your strength, your mobility. You want to walk into that confrontation looking powerful? We start now." 6 months of consistent work. Daily walks that became jogs, light weights that became real strength training. A nutritionist who taught me to fuel recovery properly. The weight came off steadily, 10 pounds, 20, 30. By month 12, I'd lost 35 pounds. My clothes hung off me, so Grace took me shopping. "New Margaret needs a new wardrobe," she declared, dragging me into Nordstrom. The saleswoman, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, took one look at me and smiled. "Someone's making a statement?" "Something like that," I said. Claire understood. We spent 3 hours building a wardrobe that projected power, tailored blazers, designer dresses, elegant jewelry. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized, someone formidable. Meanwhile, Maria Santos was building our legal case brick by brick. But I needed more than legal victory. I needed to see what they'd done with my life, how they'd spent my money, how comfortable they'd become. "We need a private investigator," I told Grace. She made a call. 2 days later, I met Jake Martinez, Rosa's cousin. Apparently, competence ran in the family, in a coffee shop downtown. "What do you need?" Jake asked. "Everything. Where they live, how they spend money, who they see. I want to know what they do with the fortune they stole from me." Jake's report came in weekly installments, each one more infuriating than the last. Week 4. David and Vanessa purchased a vacation home. Not just any vacation home, a $800,000 beach house in the Hamptons. My money, Richard's legacy, turned into their personal playground. The photos Jake provided showed them on the deck, champagne glasses raised, Vanessa's Instagram caption reading, "Dreams do come true. Blessed Hamptons, living our best life, blessed with stolen money." Week 8. Patricia Morrison closed on a 2-bedroom condo in Fort Lauderdale. Purchase price, $425,000. Cash sale. Jake tracked the money back through Vanessa's accounts. My $300,000 had grown with smart investments. Patricia was living her retirement dreams on my dime. Her Facebook photos showed her at country clubs, spa days, shopping trips. One photo caption made my blood boil. "Finally, time to enjoy the fruits of hard work. Retirement is sweet. hard work. She'd worked hard to drug me, isolate me, and facilitate the theft of everything I owned. Week 12. The lifestyle documentation was excessive. Vanessa had quit her job, didn't need it anymore. David had started a consulting business that appeared to consult approximately 0 clients. They ate at expensive restaurants 3 times a week. Vanessa's wardrobe had exploded with designer labels. David drove a new BMW M5. All of it was my money. Every dinner, every handbag, every car payment. They were living like lottery winners, because to them, I was the lottery. Week 16. Jake discovered David and Vanessa were planning their 5th anniversary party. Vanessa had hired an event planner. The budget was astronomical, $50,000 for a single night. The venue is Russo's Steakhouse in Manhattan, Jake reported. Private dining room, 30 guests, 7-course meal, premium open bar. It's scheduled for November 18th. November 18th, Richard's birthday. The coincidence felt like a sign. I started tracking their social media obsessively. Vanessa posted constantly, humble brags about their renovations, their travels, their perfect life. Patricia commented on everything. So proud of you both. You deserve this happiness. Beautiful couple. The comment section was full of friends congratulating them. People who'd known me. People who'd eaten at my table. Not one of them asked about me. I'd been erased so completely it was like I'd never existed. One post in particular stopped me cold. Vanessa, standing in front of the Hamptons house with Patricia and David. Family is everything. So grateful for the people who matter most. My amazing husband and my incredible mother. We built this life together. Our family first, grateful, blessed. Family first. She'd stolen my mantra, twisted it, used it to celebrate the money they'd stolen from me. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. Grace, I said that evening, I want to be there at the anniversary dinner. My sister looked up from her laptop. At the restaurant? Yes, I want to see their faces. I want them to know I'm alive before the legal hammer drops. I want them to feel what's coming. Grace's smile was predatory. Now you're thinking like an attorney. Can we time the arrests? Maria says the DA is ready to file charges whenever we give the word. The civil suits are drafted. We just need your signature to proceed. Grace leaned forward. You want to do this publicly? At their celebration? I want to do this where they feel safest, surrounded by their friends, in the middle of their perfect life built on my bones. I want them to feel the ground disappear beneath their feet. Then that's what we'll do. I made the reservation myself, using a fake name, a corner table in the same private dining area at Russo's Steakhouse. November 18th, 7 p.m., same time as their party, same room. The final piece fell into place in October. Rosa Martinez called me, her voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Chen, I don't know what to say. The $50,000 that just appeared in my account, I'd send it anonymously through Grace's firm. Payment for saving my life. Rosa had quit the nursing home the day she got it, enrolled in an RN to BSN program, and started working at a legitimate hospital. You saved me, I said simply. This is me saying thank you. Rosa was crying. You deserve everything good in this world. And Rosa, thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. The weeks before the dinner passed in a blur of final preparations. Maria filed sealed motions with the court. The FBI had been briefed on the fraud case. The DA's office had prepared arrest warrants pending my word. Everything was ready. The trap was set. I just had to show up and spring it. On November 17th, Grace and I flew to New York. I'd bought a burgundy dress for the occasion. Designer, fitted perfectly to my new body, elegant without being flashy. The kind of dress that made people look twice. We checked into the plaza. In the morning, I got my hair done professionally. Makeup applied by an expert. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone powerful. Someone who'd survived hell and come out forged in steel. You ready? Grace asked as we prepared to leave for Russo's. I thought about David, my son who'd betrayed me. Vanessa. who'd orchestrated it all. Patricia, who'd facilitated my drugging and imprisonment. I thought about the life they'd stolen, the $2 million, the 6 months of chemical torture, the erasure of my entire existence. I'm ready, I said, and I was. The legal assault began quietly, like distant thunder before a storm. Maria Santos filed the first motion on September 15th, a freeze on all assets connected to the property sales. It was done through sealed court filings. No public record, no warning. The motion cited ongoing fraud investigation and requested immediate preservation of funds. Judge Patricia Rothman granted it within 48 hours. David Chen's bank account froze on a Tuesday morning while he was buying coffee. "I'm sorry, sir, your card has been declined," the barista said. David frowned. "That's impossible. Try it again?" Declined. He tried his backup card. Declined. By the time he got home, Vanessa was on the phone with their bank, her voice climbing into panic territory. "What do you mean our accounts are frozen? On whose authority? This is insane." Jake had audio recording equipment pointed at their house. He'd been documenting everything for weeks, and Grace had gotten a warrant for electronic surveillance as part of the criminal investigation. We heard every word. "They won't tell me anything," Vanessa said after hanging up. "Just that it's a legal matter and we need to contact an attorney. David, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know," David said, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. Not guilt yet, just confusion. "Let me call our accountant." The accountant was equally mystified. No one could tell them anything because the investigation was sealed. They were fighting shadows. That was the beauty of Maria's strategy. "We don't engage," she'd explained. "We let them panic, let them make mistakes, let them show their true colors." 2 days later, a second motion hit. Property ownership disputes on all 7 buildings they'd sold. The new owners received legal notices that the sales might have been fraudulent, obtained through forged power of attorney. 3 of the buyers immediately filed claims against David for misrepresentation. "This doesn't make sense," David kept saying, according to Jake's surveillance. "Mom signed everything. She had dementia. The doctors said so. The power of attorney was legal. Except it wasn't. And somewhere deep down, I wondered if David knew that, if he'd suspected and looked the other way because it was convenient." Vanessa called Patricia, her voice shrill with stress. "Mom, something's wrong. The accounts are frozen. People are questioning the property sales. Lawyers keep sending letters." "Calm down," Patricia's voice was sharp. "It's probably just routine estate investigation. These things happen when elderly people are in facilities. Just ignore it. The legal system is slow. By the time anything happens, it'll be too late to matter." Patricia was advising them to wait it out, to let the storm pass. She had no idea I was the storm. Week 3 of the legal assault, IRS investigation notice. Harrison Webb had flagged the property sales to the federal tax authorities, the rapid liquidation of assets, the below-market sales, the cash transfers. All of it looked like money laundering or tax evasion. Because it was. David and Vanessa received audit notices for the past 3 years. So did Patricia. "They're investigating everything," David said, his voice hollow. "Our taxes, our accounts, the property sales. Vanessa, what if something wasn't done right? With Mom's paperwork? Your mother was incompetent," Vanessa snapped. "The doctors said so. We have documentation. We did everything legally." But there was doubt creeping into her voice now, the kind of doubt that appears when the walls start closing in. I listened to the recordings in Grace's living room, a glass of wine in my hand, and felt satisfied, not happy yet. Satisfaction would come later, but this was progress. "They're starting to eat at each other," Grace observed. "Classic behavior when conspirators feel pressure." Week 5. More legal letters. Notices of intent to sue for fraud, misrepresentation, and elder abuse. These came from Maria's firm but didn't yet name the criminal charges. They were warnings, softening the target. Patricia flew up from Florida to handle the situation. Jake documented her arrival at David and Vanessa's Westchester house. She stayed for 3 days, and the surveillance picked up some interesting conversations. "You need to get ahead of this," Patricia told them over dinner the first night. "Hire a good lawyer, a really good lawyer. These frivolous claims need to be shut down immediately." "Mom, what if it's not frivolous?" Vanessa asked. "What if someone's actually investigating?" "Who would investigate? Margaret's been gone for almost 2 years. She has no one. Her sister is on the other side of the country, and they barely spoke." That was incorrect. Grace and I had talked every week before my imprisonment, but Patricia's assumption was revealing. She'd counted on my isolation, on having no one who'd fight for me. Mistake. "I keep thinking about Mom," David said quietly. "We haven't heard from the facility in months. Is she okay?" The question hung in the air. For a moment, I thought I heard actual concern in his voice. But then Patricia responded, "David, your mother is where she needs to be, being cared for by professionals. You did the right thing. Stop second-guessing yourself." The right thing. They destroyed my life and convinced themselves it was mercy. Week 7. I sent Rosa her thank you gift. $50,000, anonymously transferred through an offshore account and a law firm that couldn't be traced back to me. The note attached said simply, "For seeing what others missed, for being brave, for being kind." Rosa called the law firm crying. They told her the donor wished to remain anonymous, but wanted her to know she'd saved a life. "I'll never forget her," Rosa said through tears. "Mrs. Chen. I hope she's okay wherever she is." I wanted to call her, to tell her I was more than okay, but that would have blown operational security. Instead, I sent a second anonymous message. "She's safe, and because of you, she's going to get justice." Jake informed me that Rosa had quit Shady Pines. The nursing home's actual name was Sunset Gardens, but everyone called it Shady Pines the day the money cleared. She'd enrolled in school and started working at Providence Hospital. Good jobs, good life. The ending she deserved. One victory in a war full of casualties. Week 9, Halloween. David and Vanessa threw a party at their Hamptons house. 30 people, expensive catering, costume theme. Vanessa dressed as Marie Antoinette. The irony was unintentional, but perfect. Jake's drone footage showed them laughing, drinking, celebrating. David wore a king costume, crown and all. Patricia came dressed as an elegant queen, holding court on the deck. They'd stolen a kingdom, and now they were pretending they'd built it themselves. "Let them eat cake," Grace muttered, watching the footage. The party photos went up on Instagram within hours. Vanessa's caption, "Boo! Life is so good right now. Feeling blessed and grateful for this amazing journey. Halloween, Hamptons, your blessed family time." The comments flooded in. "You guys are living the dream. That house is gorgeous. You deserve all this happiness." Every comment was a knife in my chest. These people thought they were watching a success story. They had no idea it was all built on elder abuse and fraud. But they'd find out soon. Week 12. The anniversary party planning went into high gear. Vanessa posted about it constantly. The venue, the flowers, the dress she'd bought, 3,000 tiri, my money, the guest list. Patricia was heavily involved, commenting on every post. "Can't wait to celebrate you two. You've built something beautiful together." They'd built it with my bones as the foundation. I watched from Portland, gathering evidence, building rage, waiting for the perfect moment. Maria filed the final criminal complaints under seal the first week of November. The DA reviewed everything and greenlit the prosecution. "All we need is your word," Maria said. "We can arrest them tonight if you want." "No," I said. "I want to be there. I want them to see my face." November 18th? November 18th. Grace helped me plan every detail. The reservation at Russo's Steakhouse. The corner table with perfect sightlines to the private room, the burgundy dress, the timing. "The FBI will be standing by," Maria explained. 2 agents in the restaurant dressed as regular diners. NYPD has units outside. When you give the signal, you'll have a panic button in your purse. They move in. Arrests on site. Charges? David and Vanessa. Multiple counts of fraud. Forgery, financial exploitation of an elderly person, conspiracy. Patricia: fraud, conspiracy, practicing medicine without proper authority, elder abuse, federal and state charges. Prison time? Years, plural, for all three of them. Grace squeezed my hand. You sure you want to do this publicly? It'll be in every news outlet in New York. Your story will go viral. I thought about it, about the shame, the exposure, the vulnerability of having my victimization broadcast to the world. Then I thought about every other Margaret Chen out there, every elderly person being drugged, stolen from, erased by the family members who should protect them. Let it go viral, I said. Let everyone see what they did, and let everyone see that I survived it, that I fought back, that I won. On November 17th, Grace and I flew to New York. We checked into the Plaza Hotel. I barely slept that night. Too much adrenaline, too much anticipation. The next morning, I prepared for war. Hair appointment at 10 a.m., makeup at 1 p.m. Grace helped me into the burgundy dress at 5 p.m. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone powerful, someone who'd been to hell and come back forged in steel. You look beautiful, Grace said, and terrifying. It's a good combination. The car service arrived at 6:30 p.m. Russo's Steakhouse was only 10 blocks away, but I wanted to arrive early, scope the battlefield, watch them arrive, unsuspecting. We pulled up to the restaurant at 6:45 p.m. The November air was cold and sharp. Through the windows, I could see the private dining room being prepared. Flowers everywhere, crystal and silver gleaming. It looked like a fairy tale, built on a nightmare. Grace walked me inside. The maitre d' checked our reservation, table for two, corner position in the semi-private area adjacent to the main private dining room. Perfect. We sat down, ordered drinks, and waited. At 7:15 p.m., they started arriving. David and Vanessa came first, dressed to the nines. My son looked happy, successful, no trace of the guilt that should have eaten him alive. Vanessa glowed in a designer dress, her hair perfect, her smile radiant. She greeted each arriving guest like a celebrity. Hugs, air kisses, posed photos. Patricia arrived at 7:30 p.m., elegant in navy blue, holding a wrapped gift. She hugged her daughter, kissed David's cheek. They looked like the perfect family. Perfect families don't drug elderly mothers and steal their fortunes. I watched them toast, watched them laugh, watched David give a speech about the love of his life and the incredible family we've built together. Grace's hand covered mine. You okay? I'm perfect. At 8:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Maria's text, FBI agents are in position, NYPD outside on your signal. I watched David raise his glass one more time, watched Patricia stand up to give a speech of her own. To David and Vanessa, Patricia said, her voice carrying across the dining room, you two have built something beautiful, a life full of love, success, and family. Family is everything. Never forget that. Never forget that we take care of our own. We take care of our own, the audacity, the sheer breathtaking audacity. I stood up, Grace stood with me, and together we walked toward their table. Patricia saw me first. Her face drained of color. The fork she'd been holding clattered against her plate, once, twice, then fell completely, hitting the ground with a clang that made everyone turn. Mom, Vanessa said, what's wrong? Patricia's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then, loud enough for the entire private dining room to hear, You're still alive? 23 faces turned to stare at me. The private dining room of Russo's Steakhouse was everything Vanessa had bragged about on Instagram. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Fifth Avenue, white tablecloths so crisp they looked like they could cut. The centerpieces were enormous arrangements of white roses and orchids, probably $300 each. My money, I thought distantly. Those flowers are my money. Grace and I had arrived at 6:45 p.m., early enough to watch the setup, late enough not to draw attention. The maitre d', a distinguished man named Antonio, seated us at our corner table with professional discretion. Our position was perfect, diagonal view of the private room's main table, close enough to hear but far enough to observe. "Your server will be right with you," Antonio said, his accent refined. "May I offer you champagne while you wait?" "Please," Grace said. "Your best bottle." When he left, my sister leaned close. "You sure about this?" My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the white tablecloth. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The champagne arrived. Dom Perignon 2012. $300 a bottle. Grace raised her glass. "To Margaret Chen," she said quietly, "who died in a nursing home and came back as someone they should fear." I touched my glass to hers. The crystal sang. The guests started arriving at 7:15 p.m. I recognized some of them from David's old Facebook posts. College friends, work colleagues, Vanessa's sorority sisters. They arrived in couples and small groups, dressed in expensive clothes, carrying wrapped gifts. Everyone smiled. Everyone laughed. It was a celebration of stolen money. Vanessa arrived at 7:18 p.m., and my breath caught. She looked stunning. A champagne-colored dress that probably cost $5,000 hugged her figure perfectly. Her blonde hair was styled in Hollywood waves. Diamond earrings caught the light, the ones David had given her for their first anniversary. "My husband is so generous," she'd captioned the Instagram post showing them off. "Generous with my money." David came in right behind her, his hand on her lower back. My son, my only child. He wore a tailored navy suit that made him look successful and mature. 38 years old now. I'd missed 2 years of his life. 2 years I'd never get back. He'd stolen far more from me. "You okay?" Grace whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They greeted guests at the entrance to the private room. Hugs, air kisses. Vanessa posed for photos with nearly everyone, her smile brilliant and practiced. David shook hands, accepted congratulations. They looked like the perfect couple celebrating their perfect life. The perfect life built on my bones. Patricia Morrison arrived at 7:30 p.m., and my jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. She wore navy blue, elegant, sophisticated, expensive. Her silver hair was styled in a classic updo. She carried a large, wrapped box with a silver bow. She hugged Vanessa like they were the closest mother-daughter pair in the world, kissed David's cheek, adjusted his tie affectionately. This woman had forged medical documents to make me seem demented, had advised on the dosages that kept me drugged and compliant, had visited me once in that hellhole nursing home and told me I should have gone quietly. She was laughing now, smiling, enjoying the party purchased with money she'd helped steal. "That's her?" Grace asked, her voice deadly quiet. "The nurse? That's her. I'm going to enjoy watching her go to prison." By 7:45 p.m., all the guests had arrived. 30 people in total, plus David, Vanessa, and Patricia. The noise level rose, conversations overlapping, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Servers moved through with champagne and appetizers. Someone had hired a string quartet that played softly in the corner. It was beautiful, elegant. The kind of party you'd see in a magazine spread. I wanted to burn it all down. Antonio approached our table discreetly. "Ladies, would you like to order dinner?" "Not yet," Grace said. "We're waiting for something." He nodded and disappeared. Professional, discreet, perfect. At 8 p.m., they sat down for dinner. The main table was U-shaped, with David and Vanessa at the center position. Patricia sat at Vanessa's right hand. The other guests spread out along the arms of the U. The first course arrived, oysters on ice, caviar service, foie gras. The kind of first course that cost $100 per person, 33 people. That first course alone was over $3,000. My properties in Queens had generated $4,500 per month in rental income before they sold them. I was watching my monthly income being eaten in a single course. David stood up, tapping his champagne glass with a knife. Ting, ting, ting. The sound cut through the chatter. Everyone quieted, turning to face him. Thank you all for being here, David said, his voice warm and confident. Vanessa and I are so grateful to celebrate this milestone with the people we love most. Applause. Cheers. Someone shouted, "Speech!" David smiled. 5 years ago, I married the love of my life, the woman who makes me better every single day. Vanessa, you're my partner, my best friend, my everything. Here's to 5 years and 50 more. He raised his glass. Everyone raised theirs. The crystal sang as they all drank. I stayed seated, my hands in my lap, watching. Vanessa stood next, beaming. I just want to say, her voice caught, emotional. I'm so blessed. This life, this love, this family. She gestured to Patricia, my incredible mother who's always been my rock. David, who gives me everything I could ever want. Our amazing friends who've supported us through everything. I'm so grateful. More applause. Patricia was crying happy tears. Friends were calling out congratulations. Grateful. She was grateful for the fortune she'd stolen from a drugged old woman. My phone buzzed. Maria Santos's text. FBI agents are at table 12 and 18. NYPD units are outside. All units standing by. Signal when ready. I typed back, soon. The second course arrived. Lobster bisque. Probably another $50 per person. The guests exclaimed over the presentation. Vanessa took photos for Instagram. Everything had to be documented. Everything had to be shared. Let it be shared, I thought. Let the world see this. Let them remember this dinner when the arrests hit the news. At 8:25 p.m., Patricia stood up. She tapped her glass and the room quieted again. I know this isn't traditional, Patricia began, her voice maternal and warm, but I want to say something about my daughter and son-in-law, about David and Vanessa. Oh, this should be good. When Vanessa brought David home 5 years ago, I knew. I just knew they were meant to be together. Patricia's smile was radiant. They're both such good people, kind people, the kind of people who understand what family means. I gripped my champagne flute so hard I thought the stem might snap. Family is everything, Patricia continued, her voice gaining momentum. It's about taking care of each other, supporting each other, being there through thick and thin. David and Vanessa embody that. They've built a beautiful life together, a life based on love, trust, and taking care of our own. Taking care of our own. The words hit like acid. I'm so proud to call David my son-in-law, Patricia said, her hand on his shoulder. And I'm so proud of the family we've become. To David and Vanessa, may you always remember that family comes first. Always. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, toasting. Patricia hugged Vanessa, then David. Everyone was smiling. Family comes first. Taking care of our own. She'd used my mantras. The values my parents had taught me, twisted them, made them sound noble while describing the systematic destruction of an elderly woman's life. Grace's hand found mine under the table. Now? Not yet, I whispered. 1 more minute. At 8:32 p.m., Vanessa stood again. Before the main course, I just want to show you all something we're really excited about. She pulled out her phone, connected it to a screen the restaurant had set up. Photos started playing, a slideshow of their life together, the wedding. My money had paid for it. Their honeymoon in Bali, my money. The Westchester house, my money for the down payment. Vacations, cars, jewelry. Every single photo represented something they'd purchased with my stolen fortune. But then the slideshow changed. Recent photos, the Hamptons house. So this is our new beach house, Vanessa said, beaming. We just closed on it 6 months ago. It's been a dream of ours forever, and finally we could make it happen. The photos showed a gorgeous beachfront property, modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, infinity pool, the kind of house featured in luxury magazines. Purchase price, according to Jake's investigation, $800,000. Source of funds, Margaret Chen's liquidated real estate portfolio. We're actually remodeling the kitchen right now, Vanessa continued, putting in all Miele appliances, marble countertops. It's going to be amazing. We can't wait to host you all there this summer. Applause. Congratulations. Someone shouted, housewarming party. They were remodeling, using more of my money to upgrade the house they'd purchased with my money. The audacity was breathtaking, and that's when I saw it. The final straw. On the screen, a photo of David, Vanessa, and Patricia on the beach house deck, raising champagne glasses. The sunset behind them painted everything gold. They looked happy, successful, blessed. The caption on the photo read, "Family is everything. Family is everything. My words, my value system, used to celebrate my own destruction." I stood up. Grace stood with me. "Now," I said quietly. We walked toward their table. My legs felt steady, strong. I'd trained for this, prepared for this. I was ready. The room was loud, conversations, laughter, the clink of silverware. No one noticed us at first. We were just two more diners moving through the space. But Patricia noticed. She was lifting a fork to her mouth, laughing at something someone had said. And then her eyes landed on me. Her face changed. Color drained from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, fork still raised. Her hand started shaking. The fork hit her plate. Clink. The sound wasn't loud, but in that moment, it was a gunshot. She tried to lift the fork again. Her hand wouldn't cooperate. Clink. It hit the plate again. "Mom?" Vanessa was looking at her, concerned. "What's wrong?" Patricia tried to speak. Nothing came out. She stood halfway up, gripping the edge of the table. Her eyes were locked on mine, wide, terrified, disbelieving. I smiled. Just a little. Just enough for her to know this was real. "You're—" Patricia's voice came out in a croak. She swallowed, tried again. "You're still—" The fork fell from her hand completely. It hit the plate one more time, then clattered to the floor. Clang. Every single person in that private dining room turned to look. Patricia's mouth worked, and then, loud enough for every single person to hear, "You're still alive?" The silence that followed Patricia's words was absolute. 30 people frozen mid-bite, mid-laugh, mid-conversation, forks suspended in air, champagne glasses halfway to lips. The string quartet's music continued for 3 more notes before trailing off awkwardly. Every single eye turned to me. I stood there in my burgundy dress, Grace at my side, and let them look. Let them see the woman they'd tried to erase, the woman who'd survived 6 months of chemical torture and come back stronger than before. David stood up so fast his chair scraped backward with a harsh screech. "Mom!" His voice cracked on the word. His face cycled through emotions too fast to name. Shock, confusion, disbelief, something that might have been hope. "What? How are you—" "We thought that I was dead," I finished for him, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "Or just safely tucked away in that nightmare facility where you dumped me, drugged and compliant and slowly fading into nothing?" I took 3 steps closer to their table. Grace moved with me, a silent pillar of support. "Surprised, David?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Conversational, like we were discussing the weather instead of his betrayal. "Patricia certainly is. Look at her face. That's the expression of someone seeing a ghost." Patricia had gone from white to gray. She was still gripping the table, half standing, her mouth opening and closing without sound, like a fish drowning in air. Vanessa recovered first. Of course she did. She'd always been quick with the performance. "Mother Margaret," she pressed her hand to her chest, her face arranging itself into relieved concern. "Oh my God, we've been so worried about you. The facility said that you'd left suddenly and we couldn't find you and we thought—" Her voice broke perfectly, tears welling in her eyes. "We thought something terrible had happened." The performance was flawless, Academy Award worthy. If I hadn't lived through the truth, I might have believed her. Worried? I let the word hang in the air like poison. "Is that what you call it, Vanessa? Worry?" I pulled the manila folder from my purse, held it up so everyone could see. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Is that what you call stealing $2 million from an elderly woman? Worry? Is that what you call forging power of attorney documents? Worry. Is that what you call having your mother drug me into a stupor so you could liquidate everything my husband and I built over 30 years? I took another step forward. Tell me, Vanessa. I'd love to hear you define that kind of worry. The gasps started then. Sharp intakes of breath from around the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "What is she talking about?" Phones came out. Of course they did. This was the Instagram generation. Document everything. Share everything. I'd counted on it. Good. Let them record. Let this go viral. David's face had crumbled. "Mom, I don't understand what you're— $2 million, David." I cut him off, my voice sharp as broken glass. 7 properties your father and I spent decades acquiring, sold in 8 months, mostly below market value, while I was locked in a facility being pumped full of drugs I didn't need. Patricia finally found her voice. "Margaret, your dementia. You were diagnosed. You needed specialized care." "I never had dementia." The words came out louder than I'd intended, but I didn't care anymore. The rage was a living thing inside me, demanding release. "I never had dementia, Patricia. You know why? Because you're the one who made me seem demented. You switched my medications. You drugged me with benzodiazepines and antipsychotics I didn't need. You staged incidents to make me look confused. You forged medical documentation." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, held it up like evidence in a courtroom. This is from a forensic document examiner, former FBI. He analyzed the power of attorney paperwork David filed. Want to know what he found? I didn't wait for an answer. The signatures were forged, traced using a light box. The pressure points are wrong. The natural variation in my handwriting doesn't match. Someone, probably you, David, or maybe Vanessa, traced my signature onto legal documents giving you control of everything I owned. David's knees seemed to buckle. He sat down hard, his face the color of ash. No, you signed them, Mom. You were confused. But you signed— I signed nothing. I slammed the folder down on their celebration table, right next to the $5,000 floral centerpiece, right on top of their perfect white tablecloth. Every signature was forged, every single one, which makes every property sale illegal, which makes you and Vanessa and Patricia guilty of fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Vanessa's tears had dried up. Her face had gone hard, calculating. I could see her mind working, looking for an escape route. "This is insane," she said, her voice cold now. "David, she's having a breakdown. This is exactly what the doctors warned us about. Paranoid delusions, persecution fantasies. The doctors you and your mother convinced to prescribe medications that would create those symptoms?" I pulled out another document. "This is my medical record from Providence Hospital in Portland. 6 weeks of proper evaluation by doctors with no connection to this family. Want to know what they found? Perfect cognitive function. No signs of dementia whatsoever. Just massive over-medication with drugs specifically chosen to cause confusion and compliance." Grace stepped forward then, her voice calm and professional. "I'm Grace Chen Thompson, Margaret's sister. I'm also a retired attorney, and I can confirm that everything my sister is saying is documented, verified, and currently under investigation by the FBI for bank fraud and by the New York District Attorney's Office for elder abuse and conspiracy." The room exploded into chaos. Guests standing up, voices overlapping, phones definitely recording now. Someone was crying. Someone else was shouting questions. David's college roommate, I recognized him from old Facebook photos, stood up. "David, what the fuck, man? Is this true?" Vanessa's cousin, a woman in her 50s, was staring at Patricia with horror. "Aunt Pat, you couldn't have—" I pulled out the final document. The piece de resistance. the email Harrison Webb had recovered from Vanessa's cloud backup. "This," I said, holding it up, "is an email from Vanessa to Patricia, dated March 15, 2023, 5 months after you had me committed. Would you like me to read it out loud?" "Don't you dare," Vanessa hissed. I read it anyway. "Mom, David signed the papers. We list the properties next week. He feels guilty, but I told him it's for the best. Once they're sold, we can buy the Hamptons house we looked at. Your cut will be deposited by May. Make sure you keep up the medical monitoring at the facility. We need documentation that she's declining. Love you." I lowered the paper, looking directly at Patricia. "Love you, heart emoji. That's what you wrote after discussing how to cover up your crime." Patricia's face twisted. "You have no right. That's private communication. Private communication documenting conspiracy to commit fraud?" Grace's voice was ice. "That's called evidence, Patricia." David had his head in his hands. "I didn't know," he was saying over and over. "I didn't know it was illegal. I thought," Vanessa said, "the doctor said." "You thought what, David?" I stepped closer to my son, close enough to see the tears on his face, close enough to smell his expensive cologne bought with my money. That I'd die quietly in that hellhole you abandoned me in? That you could steal everything your father left me and I'd never be able to fight back? Mom, please. That facility was torture. My voice broke on the word. They kept me so drugged I couldn't think straight. I was alone, isolated, with no one to advocate for me. I pressed the call button and no one came. I tried to tell the nurses something was wrong, and they said I was delusional. For 6 months, David. 6 months I lived in that nightmare, while you and your wife spent my money on vacation homes and German cars and designer clothes. "I'm sorry," David whispered. "I'm so sorry. You didn't what?" I leaned forward. "Didn't think to visit more than once in 6 months? Didn't think to question why the facility looked like a prison? Didn't think to ask why I went from running a $2 million real estate portfolio to barely recognizing my own name in just 3 months?" David had no answer, because there was no good answer. Vanessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. We're leaving. David, get your coat. We don't have to listen to this." "Sit down, Vanessa." Grace's voice cracked like a whip. "You're not going anywhere. You can't tell me what to do. The FBI can." I pulled out my phone, held it up so she could see the screen. "They're here, in this restaurant. They've been listening to every word, along with NYPD officers stationed outside." The blood drained from Vanessa's face. Patricia stood up, grabbing her purse. "I'm not staying for this farce." "Actually, you are." 2 men in suits appeared at the entrance to the private dining room, FBI, their badges already out. "Patricia Morrison, Vanessa Morrison, David Chen." The taller agent's voice carried authority. "We need you to come with us." The private dining room descended into absolute pandemonium. Vanessa whirled on her mother, her voice climbing into hysteria. "You said this was legal. You said she signed everything. You said the power of attorney would hold up." "Shut up," Patricia hissed, her composure finally cracking. "Vanessa, shut your mouth right now. Don't say another word to anyone." But it was too late. The floodgates had opened. "You told me the paperwork was legitimate." Vanessa's voice broke. "You said you'd verified everything. You said there was no way—" I said, "Shut up!" Patricia grabbed her daughter's arm. "We need a lawyer, now. Before you say anything else that incriminates—" The second FBI agent, a woman with steel gray hair and cold eyes, stepped forward. "Actually, Ms. Morrison, everything said here has been recorded with proper warrant authorization, so the incriminating has already happened." Around the room, guests were recording on their phones anyway, multiple angles, multiple cameras. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Good. David was still sitting, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. I couldn't tell if he was crying or having a panic attack. Maybe both. One of his friends, the college roommate Marcus, stepped forward. David, man, is this for real? Did you actually— I didn't know it was illegal. David's head shot up, his face ravaged, tears streaking his cheeks. I swear to God, Marcus. I thought— the doctors said she had dementia. Vanessa showed me the medical reports. I thought we were protecting her assets, making sure she'd have care. I never— You never questioned any of it? I couldn't keep the contempt from my voice. Not once, David. Not even when those medical reports were conveniently provided by your mother-in-law who stood to gain $300,000 from my properties? David's face went white. What? Oh, you didn't know that part? I pulled out Harrison Webb's forensic accounting report. Patricia received $300,000 transferred through Vanessa's accounts, her cut of my stolen fortune. She didn't facilitate your fraud out of concern for you. She did it for profit. David turned to Patricia, betrayal raw on his face. You said you were helping us. You said— I was helping you, Patricia snapped, her mask finally dropping completely. Your mother was old, alone, sitting on a fortune while you and Vanessa struggled with student loans and overpriced housing. Someone had to be practical about the situation. The room gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. Mom, what are you— I'm saying what everyone else is too polite to say. Patricia's voice climbed. Elderly people holding on to assets they'll never use while their children can barely afford to live? That's wasteful. Margaret wasn't using that money effectively. She was just sitting on it talking about David's inheritance, like she was going to live forever. Well, someone had to think about the living. The entire room was staring at her, horror etched on every face. Vanessa's cousin spoke up, her voice shaking. Aunt Pat, you can't be serious. You're talking about stealing from— I'm talking about resource reallocation. Patricia was fully unhinged now. Margaret had more money than she could ever spend. David and Vanessa had their whole lives ahead of them. Was it really so wrong to— To drug me? I interrupted. To forge legal documents? To imprison me in a facility where I was chemically tortured for 6 months? Yes, Patricia. That was really so wrong. Patricia's mouth snapped shut. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Too late for damage control, Grace said quietly. Everything you just said was recorded by federal agents. The FBI agent who'd identified himself pulled out handcuffs. The sight of them made several guests gasp. Patricia Morrison. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, forgery, and practicing medicine without proper authority. He began reading her Miranda rights. Patricia's knees buckled. No, you can't. I have rights. I demand to speak to a lawyer. You'll have plenty of time for lawyers, the female agent said, moving toward Vanessa. Vanessa Morrison, you're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. This is insane, Vanessa shrieked. I was protecting my husband's mother. That's not a crime. That's family responsibility. Stealing $2 million is a crime, I said coldly, no matter how you try to justify it. David stood up on shaking legs. He looked at the agents, then at me, then back at the agents. Are you arresting me too? The male agent consulted with his partner quietly. Then, David Chen, we need you to come to the field office for questioning. You're not under arrest at this time, but we strongly suggest you cooperate fully with the investigation. He will, Marcus said, stepping forward to grip David's shoulder. David, don't say another word until you have a lawyer. I'll call my firm. No! Vanessa screamed as the female agent put handcuffs on her wrists. David, tell them. Tell them this was all a misunderstanding. Tell them your mother was sick and we were helping her. But David wasn't looking at Vanessa. He was looking at me. Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I really thought you were sick. I thought we were doing the right thing. The grief in his voice was real. The devastation on his face was genuine. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered 6 months of drugged helplessness, $2 million stolen, My entire life erased. You didn't think, David, I said. You didn't question. You didn't visit. You didn't protect me. You listened to your wife and her criminal mother instead of listening to your own conscience. And now you get to live with that. Patricia and Vanessa were being led out by the FBI agents. Patricia was still trying to maintain some dignity, walking with her head high. Vanessa was crying hysterically, mascara streaming down her face, still trying to argue with the agents. The guests were in chaos, some crying, some on their phones calling lawyers or recording everything, some just standing there in shock. David's college friends surrounded him, creating a protective barrier. "Come on, man," Marcus said gently. "Let's get you out of here. Get you a lawyer. Figure this out." David looked at me one more time. "Mom, can I talk to you? Please?" "Through my attorney," Grace said before I could answer. "All communication goes through Maria Santos of Santos & Associates. She'll be in touch." David's face crumbled again, but he nodded and let his friends lead him away. The restaurant manager appeared, wringing his hands. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so terribly sorry for this disturbance." "Don't be sorry," I said. "This was exactly what needed to happen." Grace took my arm. "Come on, let's get you out of here." As we walked toward the exit, I turned back one last time, looked at the destroyed anniversary party, the abandoned table with its expensive centerpieces, the guests in their designer clothes looking shell-shocked and scandalized. "They wanted me gone," I said, loud enough for everyone still in the room to hear. "They wanted me quietly erased so they could enjoy the fortune they stole. Instead, they get their wish, just from a prison cell." And then Grace and I walked out into the November night, leaving the wreckage behind us. 6 months later, I stood in the Queens County Courthouse watching my son take a plea deal. David Chen, 38, pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud and 1 count of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. In exchange for his full cooperation with authorities and testimony against Vanessa and Patricia, the DA offered 5 years probation, full restitution of stolen funds, and no prison time. His attorney, the expensive kind Marcus's law firm had provided, laid out the mitigation factors. David had been manipulated by his wife and mother-in-law. He genuinely believed the medical reports about my dementia. He'd had no knowledge of the forged signatures until the FBI showed him the forensic analysis. He'd been a victim, too, in his own way. I sat in the gallery next to Grace and watched my son stand before the judge. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, the shadows under his eyes. "Do you understand the terms of this plea agreement, Mr. Chen?" Judge Rodriguez asked. "Yes, Your Honor," David said. His voice was steady but hollow. "And do you accept responsibility for your actions?" David was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Yes, Your Honor, I accept full responsibility. What I did, what we did, to my mother, was unforgivable. I can't undo it. But I can spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." The judge sentenced him. 5 years probation, $1.2 million in restitution to be paid to me over 10 years, 500 hours community service, working with elder abuse prevention organizations, mandatory counseling. David was escorted out through a side door. He didn't look at me. Vanessa's trial was 3 weeks later. She'd refused the plea deal, convinced she could win at trial. Her attorney tried to paint her as a devoted wife who'd been following her mother's medical advice. The jury didn't buy it. The emails were too damning, the financial paper trail too clear, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in federal prison for elder abuse and fraud. She'd serve 18 months if she behaved. I watched the bailiffs lead her away. She was crying again. Still beautiful even in prison orange, still trying to play the victim. Patricia Morrison's sentencing was the one I'd been waiting for. She'd pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Her attorney knew the evidence was overwhelming. 4 years in federal prison for conspiracy, elder abuse, fraud, and practicing medicine without a license. I gave a victim impact statement. stood at the microphone and told the judge exactly what Patricia had done, how she'd drugged me, isolated me, facilitated the theft of everything I owned, how she'd visited me once in that nightmare facility and told me I should have gone quietly. "The physical harm will heal," I said, my voice echoing through the courtroom, "but the betrayal, the violation of trust, that leaves scars that never fully fade." Patricia Morrison used her medical knowledge and her position of trust to destroy an elderly woman's life for profit. She deserves every day of prison she receives. Judge Chen, no relation but I appreciated the coincidence, looked at Patricia with undisguised disgust. "Ms. Morrison, your actions represent a profound betrayal of everything the medical profession stands for. You used your knowledge to harm rather than heal, for profit. I hope you spend your 4 years in prison reflecting on the lives you've damaged." Patricia was led away without a word. No more speeches about family first. No more justifications about resource reallocation. Just prison orange and handcuffs. The financial recovery took months to sort out. All 7 properties had to be traced, valued, and either recovered or compensated for. The buyers who'd purchased in good faith had to be made whole. The legal fees alone were staggering, but when the dust settled, I had $2.8 million, my original $2 million plus damages, interest, and a portion of Patricia's seized assets. I stood in the office of my restored real estate portfolio and looked at the spreadsheet Grace had prepared. 8 properties now. I'd bought back 6 of the original buildings and acquired 2 more. "You did it," Grace said, looking over my shoulder. "You got everything back. And then some." Not everything, I thought. You can't get back time. You can't get back trust. You can't get back the mother-son relationship that died in that nursing home. But I got justice. And that was enough. David wrote me letters from his probation, long letters, handwritten, explaining everything. How Vanessa had isolated him from me gradually. How Patricia had seemed so credible with her medical terminology. How he genuinely believed I was sick. How sorry he was. I read every letter, kept them in a box in my home office, but I didn't respond for 3 months. When I finally wrote back, I was honest. "David, I believe you were manipulated. I believe you thought you were doing the right thing, but you were also weak. You chose to believe convenient lies rather than question uncomfortable truths. You abandoned me when I needed you most. I forgive you because you're my son. But our relationship will never be what it was. Some breaks don't heal cleanly. We met for coffee 6 months into his probation. It was awkward, painful. He cried, I didn't. But we met again a month later, and a month after that. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding something. Not the relationship we'd had, something different, something more honest and far more fragile. He divorced Vanessa from prison. She'd filed for an appeal, but it was going nowhere. They'd lost everything, the Westchester house, the Hamptons property, the cars, the jewelry, all of it seized and sold to pay restitution. David lived in a small apartment in Jersey City now, working as a claims adjuster. Humble work, honest work. He sent me his monthly restitution payments like clockwork, small steps toward redemption. I donated $500,000 to the National Center on Elder Abuse. They used it to create a legal defense fund for elderly victims of financial exploitation, the Margaret Chen Justice Initiative. I hired Rosa Martinez as my personal companion and assistant. She'd finished her BSN, but when I offered her twice what any hospital would pay to help me run my properties and my foundation work, she'd accepted immediately. "You saved my life once," I told her. "Now help me save others." Together, we started a mentorship program for elder abuse survivors. Once a month, I spoke at support groups, shared my story, showed them that survival was possible, that justice was possible, that you could be drugged, stolen from, imprisoned, and still come back stronger. Grace and I had dinner every Sunday, sometimes at her place in Portland, sometimes at my restored home in Queens. We'd cook together, Mom's recipes mostly, and talk about everything and nothing. "We're the sisters who fight back," Grace said one evening, raising her wine glass. I touched mine to hers. "And win." A year after the anniversary dinner confrontation, I hosted my own celebration. 50 people. My real family. Rosa and her cousins. Grace and her husband. The attorneys who'd fought for me. Elderly abuse survivors I'd mentored. Friends from the community center who'd welcomed me back. Mrs. Kowalski from next door. David came too, on probation-approved travel. He sat quietly in the corner, helping in the kitchen when I'd let him, careful not to presume anything. Patricia and Vanessa were in prison. Patricia wouldn't be eligible for parole for 3 years. Vanessa had another year to serve. I didn't think about them much anymore. The house was full of laughter, real laughter, not the performative kind from Vanessa's Instagram parties. This was joy, messy and genuine and earned. Rosa gave a toast to Margaret Chen, the strongest person I know, the woman who refused to stay erased. Everyone raised their glasses. I stood up, looking around at the faces of people who'd helped me survive, who'd fought for me, who'd believed me when it would have been easier not to. "My parents taught me that family comes first," I said. They were right. But they didn't teach me that sometimes. Your family isn't the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand with you when everything falls apart. Sometimes it's the people who see you when others look away. Sometimes it's the people who fight for justice even when it's hard. I looked at Rosa, at Grace, at Maria Santos and Harrison Webb, at every survivor in that room who'd refused to stay silent. "That's family," I said, "and that's what came first. Not blood, not obligation, but love. Real love. The kind that saves lives." That night, after everyone left, I stood in my garden under the November sky. Same month as the anniversary dinner, same cold air, but everything else was different. They'd thought getting rid of me would be easy, an elderly woman alone with no one to fight for her. They'd thought they could drug me into submission, steal my fortune, and erase me from existence. They'd learned the hardest lesson: never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. Because when you've already lost everything, when you've been drugged, imprisoned, betrayed by your own child, you have no reason to stay quiet, no reason to stay nice, no reason to disappear. You have every reason to fight. And when you fight with the full force of your rage, your resilience, and your refusal to be erased, you don't just survive, you win. I looked up at the stars, the same stars Richard and I used to watch from this very garden, felt his presence like a gentle hand on my shoulder. I got justice, my love, I thought, for both of us, for the life we built, for the son we raised. I didn't stay quiet. I didn't disappear. I came back, and I won. The November wind blew cold across my face, but I wasn't cold anymore. I was forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, unbreakable. And I would spend the rest of my life making sure no other Margaret Chen ever had to fight alone. If you believe justice is possible even when everything seems lost, subscribe to hear more stories of survival, strength, and sweet, sweet revenge. Which city are you from? Drop it in the comments. I love hearing from survivors around the world. Remember, they can steal your money, your property, even your temporary freedom, but they can never steal your strength. Stay strong, stay fierce, stay unbreakable.